tradition and the echoes of history, in the heart among the vast Kazakh landscape is a hidden battle that needs our attention: domestic violence. It is a harsh reality that begs for our recognition and comprehension in Kazakhstan's broad steppes and busy cities. With this project, we will untie the complex webs, particularly those that encircle the lives of women in Kazakhstan. Domestic violence is any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive, threatening behavior, violence, or abuse between those who have been intimate partners or family members, regardless of gender or sexuality. It appears as physical, emotional, and psychological suffering. Domestic violence is a shadow that exists inside homes. Current laws in Kazakhstan, such as the 2009 Law on Prevention of Domestic Violence, do not consider domestic abuse to be a separate crime. In domestic violence-related cases, 150 women suffer severe physical harm annually, 200 sustain moderate injuries, and over 4,000 sustain minor injuries. Every day, police gets over 300 allegations of physical abuse of women and children, as well as cases of homicide and disability. The origins of this conflict are found in gender-based inequalities, constrictive social standards, and views rooted in centuries-old cultural traditions. The firmly established patriarchal system in Kazakhstan that creates undue pressure on women and restricts their chances is an enormous contributing factor to domestic violence. One of the ancient but well-known traditions is Kız alıp kaçu, where a man kidnaps a woman to marry her. Nowadays, this is rare to encounter, especially in big cities, but in small regions it can still be found. The woman often becomes a victim of manipulations, making it challenging for her to leave the new home and the new husband. Small efforts are being made to prevent violence, and the issue isn't being addressed much. The warless of pain comes from an array of sources. The persistent influence of economic limitations, unequal power relations, and social standards all contribute to the expansion of the problem that extends through many families. People who fear social rejection or judgment may be discouraged from leaving an abusive relationship due to cultural standards that stigmatize divorce. Legal systems may occasionally fail to offer victims of domestic abuse sufficient protection, which encourages the continuation of destructive behaviors. Promoting gender equality, raising awareness, strengthening legal frameworks, and granting women economic freedom are all essential ways for reducing inequality. In addition to tackling the complicated problem of domestic violence, readily available support services and cultural shift away from violence help to build a society that is safer and more just. There may be a shift towards healthier relationships as younger generations question gender norms and push for equality, which could help to reduce the incidence of domestic violence. Positive change is gradually fostered by educational programs, awareness campaigns, and enhanced support networks, all of which are essential in ending the cycle. Due to sociological and legislative reforms, women's rights in the workplace and in school have improved, making a positive step against sexism. Women's support for gender equality campaigns is expanding, which helps to challenge discriminatory attitudes and create an inclusive society. Understanding how generational transition affects family structure requires looking at a number of factors, most notably those related to gender norms and women's duties in homes and stereotypes. The transition from the Soviet to post-Soviet era will be examined in detail in this analysis, along with the knock-on impacts of shifting educational dynamics, shifting economic trends, and shifting cultural norms. Through a close examination of these variables, we hope to unravel the complex relationship between generation shifts and the reshaping of family standards, with a focus on the responsibilities that are attributed to women. First, let's look at post-Soviet Union nations, and these are particularly Kazakhstan, Mongolia, and Russia. The welfare system of Russia, Kazakhstan, and Mongolia saw major changes following the fall of Soviet Union. They moved to economies focused on the market, which led to issues like job migration and population migration. The government's assistance to families worsened, which increased unemployment and poverty. Inequality increased in both urban and rural areas. Families evolved and become less conventional. The welfare systems underwent a decentralization and privatization reform in the 1990s, while Russia continued to provide aid to everybody. Kazakhstan and Mongolia began providing assistance according to the needs of the population. Single-parent household increased as a result of this change. Family structure were strained by poverty and uncertainty. Programs such as the Poverty Alleviation Program and the Council on Family and Women Affairs were attempted by Kazakhstan and Mongolia, but they were not very successful. During the transition period, there was a notable increase in extramarital births, single-parent families, and a delay in the age of marriage, says government of Kazakhstan in 2012. Like Russia, Kazakhstan saw a sharp decline in marriages in the 1990s with a 48% reduction from 1992 to 2000, despite a downward trend in divorce up until that point. Kazakhstan was affected by the world economic crisis in 2008. The National Fund was used to manage the nation's earnings, which were primarily earned from oil and gas. The government used this money to address social issues stressing the development of Kazakhstan citizens. They had programs like a baby bonus program, a pronatalist policy to encourage childbirth. The importance of families was emphasized with the launch of programs like Children of Kazakhstan and targeted social assistance, even with government backing. Kazakhstan experienced difficulties from 2008 to 2016 despite its economic growth as a result of regional and global financial crisis, particularly in 2014 when sharp declines in oil prices occurred. This sparked conversations about. In response to this, Kazakhstan increased social benefits and created a free vocational education program as part of its effort to assist families, which is Bolashak. However, family livelihoods are under risk due to persistent economic difficulties that contributed to change in family structures. And now let's look at education and examine how it affects family structures and domestic violence overall. So the fertility rate is greater in less economically developed nations because of things like limited employment options and low levels of education, which often de-empowers women. One reason for a high birth rate per family is the lack of family planning clinics, which gets worse by other factors like child labor and religious influences. Poverty increases as a result of this, which makes it difficult to provide enough resources like food and education. Women in more economically developed countries, however, can concentrate on their careers rather than having a large number of children because there are more jobs and educational options in these nations. Problems such as child labor and limiting religious customs are less common. Smaller families are the outcome of shifting family arrangements brought about by greater education throughout generations. Women who have access to education are empowered, promoting equality and lowering stereotypes based on gender. Growing level of education over time contributes to a reduction in both gender disparity and domestic violence.